All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is our second evening with the Hunting with Heart series. You may notice that there's a few cameras that are on this evening, so you can see a handful of folks, and you may notice that you're not able to turn yours on. Just to keep the streaming clean tonight, we have only allowed the people that are going to be presenting tonight to turn their cameras on. But everybody has access to the chat. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the screen there and click on the chat, maybe you can start by just letting us know where you're tuning in from tonight and say hello to the crew here. And I have some good friends on here with me tonight. So for those of you that weren't with us last week, we have a similar crew on here tonight. Jonathan Ben Sickle was in the crowd last week, but didn't speak. So he'll be speaking a little bit tonight as well. And this is our team. So let me just maybe go over what our game plan is for the night here. Oh, awesome. Courtney, BC, Vaughn. Sorry, I got ADD here. I'm seeing the places start to pop up on the screen there. So yeah, I'm just going to maybe go over what our game plan is for tonight, what our intention is with putting this event together. And then we'll dive in and we'll tell some stories, we'll answer some questions, and so forth. So our game plan tonight, we have a panel of hosts here that are going to be sharing some stories tonight about why they hunt and what it means to them. Last week's call was a little bit more on the, I wouldn't quite call it a tactical call, but it was a little more on the side of like, how do you get started in hunting, you know? And we talked a lot about sustainability last week. We talked about some of the common barriers that people face when they're getting started in hunting. So if you haven't watched that one yet, go check out the replay. I sent out the link in an email earlier today, so hopefully folks got it there. Tonight is going to be a little bit more philosophical in some ways. And you know, I think the philosophical part, to me at least, is just as important as the tactical side of it, because hunting has completely changed who I am as a human being. I very much think of myself and my relationship with the world through the lens of somebody that goes out and interacts with the natural environment in this really potent, visceral kind of way. You know, I go and I harvest my food and I take, and I also try to give in that process. So it very much is a philosophy that impacts every bit of my life and who I am. And I think having an opportunity to come together and share these stories about how it impacts us is actually a really powerful part of the process, and where some of the learning and the growth actually happens along that journey. There's a reason that we refer to this as the hunter's journey and not just hunting 101. Because it really is profound as we deepen our relationship with the natural world, we deepen our relationship with our food. And, you know, in this modern world, there's a lot of people that really don't understand why somebody might hunt or that it could be sustainable. So a common thing that we come across, and this came up when we chatted about barriers last week, is, you know, people often feel kind of alone or isolated, or like they have to hide this part of themselves in this world because they don't have a community that supports it. So one of the things that we found a ton of value in, we run this thing called the virtual hunt camp, where we meet every other week on Wednesday evenings with a small crew here on Zoom. And we go around the circle and people share their stories and they talk about, oh, what did you see today when you're out in the woods? And what are you going to do tomorrow? And if you had a successful hunt, you have a crew that you can enthusiastically share the story with. But if you went out and something didn't go according to plan, or you're getting stumped, it's like, hey, I've been in the woods 3-4 days in a row. I haven't seen a single deer or a single bird. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Then as a group, you know, we'll brainstorm on it. And that's where our name, the virtual hunt camp, came. You know, the idea that everybody kind of wanders off to go hunt during the day, and at night you all gather around the fire at camp. You have a drink together and you sit around the fire, you tell some stories, but so much learning has in that part. So tonight's going to be a little bit of a virtual hunt camp session as well. And we're excited to have you folks here. So the format for the night, as I said, we're going to be probably about an hour and a half. So I'm going to start off with a bit of an opening story, and then we're basically just going to pass it through our mentor team. But maybe before I go too much further, I'll just pass it around and we'll just do some really quick introductions. So for our team, if you want to just kind of name somebody after it's been passed to you, but maybe I'll pass it to you, Sandy, to kick us off tonight.
Sure thing. So yeah, just a little introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Reed, and I am currently living in both Ohio and West Virginia. I go back and forth here in the States. I've been hunting for over 10 years now, and I prefer to hunt deer and turkey. Though I do a bit of fishing as well, and I'm slowly expanding. And yeah, I like to hunt with my own bow that I made, and I also hunt with rifle. And I love hunting, and it wasn't a part of my life, but it's a big part of my life now. And I feel it really is a good balance to everything else I do environmentally with the earth. So that's me. Let's pass it on to Caleb.
Honey, and thank you for that, Sandy. My name is Caleb Musgrave. Forgive me for having any kind of weird nasally sound today. I'm on day 3 of COVID-19. So I am very, very nasally and phlegmy tonight. So I'll be off the microphone as much as possible so I don't disgust everybody here. I've been with the Hunter's Journey for 3 years. I've been hunting for going on my 23rd season of hunting now. And I'm a generational hunter. So I grew up with family members that were hunters that taught me how to hunt and taught me their ethics and their moralities. And that's really what brought me into this. So I am here to give my experience of generational knowledge and to support those who want to have a little bit more understanding of stuff. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jonathan.
Thank you, Caleb. My name is Jonathan Van Sickle. I live in the Southern Ontario part of the world, in the traditional homeland of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe people. I've been hunting for around 16 years. Right now, I'm strictly a bow hunter. I'm not opposed to using guns, but that's just where I'm at in my hunter's journey. And I tend to have a focus on white-tailed deer. I don't come from a family or a lineage of hunters. Well, you know what? I probably do way back, but not in any of the generations that I was in direct contact with. Yeah. So when I started my hunter's journey, I didn't have anyone helping me along in my direct family, but eventually I did bump into a neighbor who just gave me a few little pointers that really put me in the woods as an effective hunter. And that really changed the trajectory of not only my hunting journey, but my life as well. And so that's why I'm here and a part of this group, is because I know how much of a difference, how much of a positive force mentorship can be when it comes to hunting. And I enjoy passing along anything that I can to help someone out in their own journey. I will pass it over. Oh, is that?
Cal, do you want to just
Cal,
say hello? I know Cal's dealing with a root canal, so he might be kind of quiet tonight, but it'd be great to hear your voice even for a moment, Cal.
Sure, Chris, thank you. I've been hunting my whole life. I took my first small game at 6 or 7 years old. That would have been in like 66 or 67, 1967. I was raised by two people that were born during the Depression, and it colored their life outlook and efficiency. So I grew up with this. I will say that I made a significant, I wouldn't say shift, enhancement and depth into hunting back in mid to late 90s, when I set for myself a goal to take a deer with all handmade archery tackle from the landscape around me in West Virginia. And it took me 4 years to teach myself. We didn't have the internet like we have now with YouTube. So it took me 4 years to make and break bows, figure out how to make strings, make arrows. You know, I stumbled upon enough success that I took a deer in 1997 with a stone-tipped arrow. And it's an incredibly deep connection to my food source. And I think for me, one of the main reasons that I'm here and participating and want to support this is I know from my own experience, the more relationship you have with the game that keeps your physical body going, the more you will have empathy and appreciation and love and caring about that sustainability of that resource, so that you're sustainable and our descendants are sustainable. So with that, I think we're done. Chris, back to you.
Beautiful. Well said there, Cal. And that's really a big reason of why we put this series together and why we've kind of started this collective. You know, there is a bit of a, as there's certain generations of hunting are actually starting to phase out and the skills aren't being passed on the way they used to be. there's also these new generations of people coming up and into this world that have an interest in self-reliance and sustainability, that are really like craving on a deep level, deeper connection with the land and relationship with the land, with their food. But they come from that broken lineage where hunting hasn't been passed on. So a big part of why we're putting this together is to actually help people overcome the barriers of not being brought up in a hunting lineage in their family, and to have conversations around sustainability, around ethics, as well as, the philosophical side and the tactical, practical skill of actually applying this stuff to actually be successful. For me, being able to go out on the landscape and harvest food with, whether it's a bow I carved myself or whether it's a firearm, but to be able to harvest that and bring it home to my family is one of the most powerful things I've experienced in my life. Literally to watch an animal's life, take its last breath. It's intense, it really is. And as I say that, that's probably one of the biggest barriers, or even maybe where one of the biggest judgments towards hunting comes from, is like, if you love wildlife, how could you take their life, And I totally relate to that, because when I was in my early 20s, I was brought up in the suburbs. I didn't come from a hunting lineage like Cal did and like Caleb did. I was brought up in the suburbs. We had a long break in my lineage. If I track my ancestry back far enough, like Jonathan said, I know I have hunters in it, but that was a long time ago. And growing up around me, most of the people I spent time with were actually very against hunting. And so was I at one point in my life, like adamantly against and vocally against hunting. I was a vegetarian for 8 years, fairly strict vegetarian. And, to make a real long story short, I ended up having a bunch of health problems that ended up being related to being on this vegetarian diet, and it just really not being good for my body. And basically had a natural path that said, hey, would you consider eating meat again? And interesting enough, 4 years of pain and suffering and chronic health issues went away within a couple of months of when I started to eat meat again. So that was one interesting piece of my story. But simultaneously, I was on this other journey that was around learning to grow food. And I was hitting this place, I was studying something called permaculture. So how do we grow food in a sustainable way off of the landscape, and in a way that's not just thinking about humans' needs, but that's also thinking about the ecology of the surrounding area as well, and the wildlife and things of that nature. So I'm on this journey studying permaculture, and I had this epiphany. I'm literally apprenticing on this farm, and there's deer everywhere. Like, they're an invasive species on this island. They really are. And that's actually a whole nother tangent I could go on, and I'm not going to go there. But I realized that, like, I know nothing about the forest coming from the city. I love the forest. I think it's beautiful. I spend a lot of time in it, but like, I don't know, the names of the trees, let alone like what kind of soil do they grow in? And how do I tell if it's healthy? Do I know how old it is? Like, what eats that tree? What else? How does it interrelate with these other species? I basically knew very little about ecology and the interrelationship between species. And I realized that, if I wanted to grow food sustainably, how could I actually know if I was doing that if I wasn't putting that into the context of the greater ecology that supported that farm? So that was happening simultaneously with these health issues. So suddenly I'm forced to eat meat again. And at the same time, I'm studying survival skills. I'm going and taking courses, and I'm learning about, starting fire by rubbing sticks together and all these different things. So all of these things are kind of lining up in my journey. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, her stepdad is a hunter. And I start spending a little bit of time with him and realize that, he's not what I had a story of what a hunter was in my head. Being brought up in the city, I had formed this story in my head about why hunting was unsustainable and what a hunter was, and I had this idea of these redneck trophy hunters that really didn't care about the environment and were just out to kill things for sport. That's what I thought a hunter was. And simultaneously, I thought, like, well, wildlife species are crashing all over the world. Our environment is clearly in threat. So killing wildlife for food is obviously a bad thing, if you think about those two things. But I had that judgment from a place of self-admittingly knowing nothing about ecology, which is kind of funny for me to look back on it now. I'm like, how could I have this judgment about hunting being unsustainable when I self-admit that I know so little about ecology and how ecosystems actually function and work? So without making this a really long story, I basically start going down this journey of starting to learn about plants and birds and trees and the web of life, and learning about survival skills and gardening and all of these things, and basically decide, well, if I want to eat food, if I'm going to eat meat, I don't want to feel disconnected from that taking of the life. And And I started to realize that that story I had about hunting being unsustainable was really just that, a story. And that the emotional feeling that I had around something dying was a story that I had created as well, you know? It was my story that like killing things is inevitably bad. As I started to track and witness nature, I started thinking, you know, the wildlife out here, they seem to have a much different relationship to death and life than I do as a human. The things that are out there day in and day out, you know, it's a privilege for me to go and live in this comfy little house and go to a grocery store and actually be disconnected from the give and take of life. When you're outside 365 days a year in a landscape of predators, where you never know where your next meal is, where you don't know what the weather is going to be a week from now, where there is no hospital, that changes perspective around life and death. So these big philosophical questions all started coming up, and I started thinking, you know, like I don't actually, I realized that living in my isolated urban kind of dwelling with all of these opinions, it was actually just a story, and I was under an illusion that me living as a vegetarian prevented other things from dying. One of the biggest things that impacts wildlife populations worldwide, way more so than hunting or anything else, is habitat destruction. The amount of land that has been cleared for farming, think about all of the wildlife that have died and don't live anymore because of farmland, even organic farmland, you know? And it's not at all a criticism of organic farming. It's just a reality, you know? When we clear land to create farms to grow food, there's wildlife that don't live there anymore. And then you can have a forest that's over here, and hey, the forest is actually full of wildlife. And if we're able to take deer from that every year, and turkey from that, and goose from that every year, and every year there's roughly the same number of deer and turkey and goose there than the year before, I'm like, oh, is that actually any less sustainable than this? Or maybe it's even more sustainable, you know? And I don't really want to get into the debate back and forth about that. We can look at it from so many different angles. My point here is just, I'm sharing my journey of starting to just reflect on these bigger questions and starting to think about, you know, well, healthy habitat that supports healthy animals is very different than agricultural land. And if I have the ability to go and harvest in there, you know, the weasels are killing chipmunks and squirrels and mice and rabbits every single year. The wolves are taking all of those, but they're also taking baby deer, and they're taking calf moose, and they're taking beavers, and they're taking grouse. And yet all of those populations are relatively stable in these healthy ecosystems, you know? And then when you put that into a greater context, you know, the first peoples of these lands, Caleb, I don't know if you mentioned that or not, but he's from Hiawatha First Nation, and at least half of his family ancestry have been living on this land for thousands and thousands of years and hunting this land for thousands of years in a way that was actually regenerative and sustainable. So I got asking all of these bigger questions about life and started thinking, okay, I want to explore what this is all about. And if I'm going to eat meat, I don't want to hide from that uncomfortable part, which is the fact that something dies so that I can actually live. And that has been so powerful because it has completely shifted my perspective on life and death. It's changed. I've supported several family members in passing in recent years. And because I'm a hunter, it's changed what that experience is for me. It's changed my thoughts on my own morality. When I'm out in the woods, I feel like I'm an active part of the food chain, and there's actual risk. You know, sometimes I'm way back in the woods and I'm by myself. I've been charged by a bear now. I've been charged by a deer. And I've had a very close encounter with a really aggressive coyote, all back in the woods. And I put myself in these situations, and it's just real, you know? And the potent life lessons that come out of that, it feels like good medicine in our modern world when things can be so confusing and divided. You know, there's so many things in the modern world that don't make sense to me. And when I go out into the woods with my bow or my firearm, and I'm in pursuit of food, and I'm actually getting to know the individual species and how they interact with each other, and I know the actual local population of deer, not only do I have an idea of the population of deer, I know individual deer and individual deer families now, because I've literally been tracking them for generations now. You know, and I can look at a deer and sometimes guess like, oh, I have an idea that I knew your grandma. You know, I was watching her, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. So to start to have that kind of relationship, it just makes so much sense to me. And as I said, it literally feels like medicine for me in this world, modern world, that often feels so confusing and out of track with our relationship with the land. So I'm I'm going to tell an actual story about starting to hunt now, and then I'm going to pass it around the team because everybody's going to share a short story here tonight. But that was how I came into hunting in the first place and how it started to shift who I was. This next story is kind of a neat one. And it's actually not about hunting, it's about trapping, but the principles are in there and the values are in there. So I started practicing. I made a bow, like kind of like Cal did. I had it in my head that I wanted to harvest my first bow, or sorry, my first deer with a bow that I harvested and made myself out of my own hands. And Cal beat me by 2 years because he said it took him 4 years to harvest his first deer. It took me 6 years to harvest my first deer with a homemade bow and a stone point as well. But before I got to that point, I was learning the skill of making bows and learning the skills of making arrows and learning the skills of tracking. I also started playing around with traps and learning to make trap parts. So I got my trapping license and I decided, okay, you know, taking a deer feels intense and overwhelming to me. I don't even know how to process it. I don't know what to do with it. I don't have a mentor. I'm literally just figuring this out on my own. I'm reading books. This was kind of before YouTube was around as well. So I wasn't able to just like search all the answers like we are now. So I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to start with trying to snare some rabbits as the first life that I actually take with my own hands. So I've been practicing the snares. I've been tracking. I felt like I knew what I was doing. And one winter, I find a spot where there's a huge rabbit population. I feel, okay, this is great. I can feel really good taking a couple hair out of here, knowing I'm not going to have a negative impact on the population there, which was so huge to me. So I spent 2 months setting snares and I don't catch a single rabbit. And I'm starting to feel kind of depressed and deflated and just being like, I'm a fool in the woods. Like I'm a city guy pretending I know the woods and blah, blah, blah. So one day I'm walking around in the woods and I'm just feeling actually really down on myself and I'm kind of beating myself up a bit. And I decide that I'm going to take all the traps down. And this is an interesting story. Like I sometimes feel like I'm making this story up when I tell it. It's just one of those kinds of stories, but I swear to a T, all of this is the truth. So I'm walking out of the woods. I've just taken down all my traps and I'm walking out and there's this little path that kind of cuts out of the forest. And then I cut across a gravel pit and there's this giant snowshoe hare pops out of a hole right at the trailhead as I'm about to leave the woods and just stops. It's the first snowshoe hare I've seen in 2 months after spending 2 months trying to trap them. And he just stops and he's sitting there looking at me. And I'm like, oh, isn't this ironic? You're just coming to like tease me right now or something, you know? And I literally was just in this like kind of funny, surreal place. And I just start talking to the rabbit. And I basically tell the rabbit, like some people are going to start tuning out thinking I'm crazy right now. But I start talking to the rabbit and I literally just tell him like, man, you're Rabbit Nation. Like you guys are so smart and so intelligent. And I feel like such a fool. And I basically just kind of go off on this big ramble. And then I kind of just finish. And it's so funny. Like I can totally picture in my head, the rabbit just kind of looks at me and then goes back in the hole, like right after I'm finished talking. And I'm like, oh, that was kind of weird. Do I tell anybody about that? Or do I just keep that one to myself? So anyways, I go home and on my walk home, I'm like, you know what? I've read a lot about rabbits. I've looked at their tracks. I've seen them before. But like, does that mean I actually know anything about a rabbit? Like, no, not really. Like rabbits, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. They're living outside in wolf country, in coyote country, in every weather that's imaginable in that ecosystem. Like to read about a rabbit in a book, to watch a documentary on it, to even see them and like track them a handful of times and follow them around. I had this like realization that like, wow, you don't know anything about rabbits, Chris. You're actually being really cocky to think that you even do. So I decided, okay, you know what? Tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up at sunrise and I'm going to trail rabbits, meaning I'm going to find fresh tracks. I'm going to get down on my hands and knees and I'm going to spend the entire day, sun up till sundown, following rabbits around the woods. And I'm going to try and learn everything I can about them. And it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had to spend, you know, who's ever thought, I know people have trailed like wolves for a long period of time or deer, but like, have you ever trailed a rabbit for, you know, close to 12 hours straight? It was so profound to actually just get into their perspective. And I won't say I'll get into their mind because I still can't pretend that I have any idea how a mind perceives the world. But I did my best to read the story written in their tracks and see how they moved through the landscape and why they did what they did. So I had this beautiful day out on the landscape and it's the end of the day. And I'm coming back in and the sun's literally going down. And I decide, you know what? I'm going to set up 2 traps tonight. Before that, I had like 20 out there. I'm going to set up 2 snares this evening based on what I learned today. I go and set up my 2 snares. And I start walking up the hill, and no joke, doesn't that same rabbit pop right back out again in the same spot he was the day before, exact same rabbit. And I'm like, wow, I've been here for 2 months. I see this, not a single rabbit. Now I've seen the same rabbit 2 days in a row, exact same time, exact same spot. And sure enough, like it stops and it's there. So I just start talking again. And I'd literally tell this rabbit my entire story about the day and everything I learned. And it was like, you guys are so cool. And I go on and I share all this stuff. And then I kind of like snicker at that. I'm like, so I set 2 snares out there. I'm just warning you. We'll see what happens. So I go home, I go to bed that night, get up the next morning, all eager, go out there to check on my traps. And boom, I've gotten my first rabbit that morning. I can't believe it. I see it off in the distance and there's this beautiful white snowshoe hare hanging. So I get all excited. I run over there and grab it. And I'm just like bustling with energy. I don't even check the second trap. I basically run home to show my wife and share it with her. So we bring it home, we skin it, we gut it. And I'm just so happy. Like I'm literally in tears. I worked 2 months like hard for this experience and then just had that potent day before. And now I've got my first rabbit. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm actually good on rabbits for this season. Like that was a huge goal for me. All this, I'm going to go out and take down that second trap. So I go to take down my second trap and sure enough, there's a rabbit in the second trap too. So I got 2 rabbits that next day after going months without and after having this profound experience, spending a whole day trailing them and getting to know them. So that I want to say was the start of my success as a hunter and starting to actually harvest food from the land. And I'm so thankful, that I didn't just get brought into a hunt camp. And this is not at all a judgment of this culture, but I'm so happy that I didn't just like get brought into a hunt camp and stuck on a stand with a gun somewhere and get lucky and have a deer walk across me and shoot it. Because that's how people's first experience with hunting is. And I'm not saying that's wrong or bad. I'm saying I'm thankful that wasn't my first experience, that I actually had to work so hard for those months. And then I hit my wall and then I had this powerful experience, like literally talking with a rabbit in the woods. And then I got those 2 rabbits the next day. Because those are the kinds of things that have changed and shifted who I am as a human being and my perspective on the world. Now, I won't tell the rest of the story because it's really long, but from there, it was like, okay, it's time to start bow hunting. That was 6 years later when I took my first deer. And I may share a deer story a little bit later this evening. We'll see where we are for time, but I've been talking quite a bit right now. So I would like to pass it over to the team. Sandy, would you like to jump on next? Or if you are not ready, feel free to pass and someone else could come in. And for folks that are just joining in, our kind of theme tonight, is why we hunt, how's it impacted our lives? What does it mean to us? So that's kind of the question that each member of our team has been posed with. And, every one of us has our own story, our own unique relationship with it. And that's part of what we wanted to kind of present to you tonight is how we can all have our own relationship with this. And people will just kind of take it wherever they want this evening. So I'll leave it there and pass it over to you, Sandy. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Chris. I love hearing that story and I love where it comes from in you. And I think that's kind of what we're addressing tonight is our own hunter's journey and why we hunt. And that's what's really cool about this group is because we can really be honest with ourselves and our stories and with you all in these stories and really tell it from the heart. So that's where I want to speak from right now is right from the heart, because I can do that here. And so when I think about what Chris said, about why do you hunt and what does it mean to you? The first thing that came to my mind is everything. And it sounds really over exaggerated, but hunting is, for me, it's everything. It's the whole piece that comes together. I have always been madly in love with the woods and with nature. And I did not, like Chris, grow up in a family that had anything to do with the woods or with nature. We were a very sports-oriented family, which is totally fine, but I felt this pull and it's been there my whole life. And so I went down different paths, right? I was a bird watcher pretty intensely for a while and got into camping and hiking and backpacking. And then I went into outdoor skills and anything to be outdoors. I was a ropes course instructor and I did some rock climbing for a while and, traveled and saw the parks and just always digging for more. And eventually I got into wildlife tracking, which is super important to me right now. And tracking is super important for me because it brings together a full understanding of the animal. When I'm on a trail, I have to know everything about the environment I'm in and how all the life works together to weave this ecosystem, and to understand the mindset of that animal that I'm trailing. It brings it together. And then I had the opportunity to hunt. And like I said, that was only about 10 years ago. And I wanted to hunt deer. I did not want to start with anything different. And there's no right or wrong to that. There's no order you go in. It's just what your heart says. And my heart said, get to know the deer. And I have spent decades walking deer trails and following deer trails and sitting on the ground. I used to play a game with the deer. It was a sneak. I would see who, kind of like I would sneak up on them and see how close I could get. And then when they would finally notice me, I would count the amount of snorts I could get before they would leave. And I think one time, I think my record was 55 snorts from one deer, trying to figure out what I was, and just being embedded there so I could watch their behavior was something I did constantly. So I felt really pulled to deer. And that might sound crazy about hunting them, but I got to the point in my journey where I had to deal with some deep questioning. What is life? What is death? Where's the line between that? And I'm a deeply philosophical person, and I spent a ridiculous amount of time thinking about those things. And then I started traveling to Africa. I've been to Africa 8 times. I go every summer. And when you sit in the vehicle and you watch lions tear a Cape buffalo apart, and you watch a leopard hunt, and you watch the impala, which are like the deer over there, moving as a herd, constantly aware that their lives, they're part of the food chain, a big part of the food chain. And you watch it and you don't see any malice in it. What you see after a while is a functioning ecosystem where there's an acceptance. I have to take life in order to be alive. And my time will come when I give way in my own body and I return to the earth. And as much as I think our culture likes to hide from that, this life and death and this desire to put death aside and hide from it and not accept it, I found myself not only accepting it as one and the same, but I felt like my only choice was I can just accept it and let other people take care of the death part, and I can benefit it with my food and my clothing and everything else, or I can own it. I can be a part of the dance and the journey. And by owning it, I can honor it. And for me, coming to that realization was super, super important. And that's why I picked up the rifle, and that's why I picked up the bow. There was no way in my mind and heart that I could continue to eat and wear leather and buy the things that I buy without acknowledging that every single thing came from a life form. And I could no longer say that an animal life form was more important than a plant life form. It was life. And if I didn't become a part of it, for me, I felt like I was being disrespectful. I felt like I was being blind. So hunting gave me a chance to give back. So when I am hunting an animal, I am on a journey through the landscape. I'm a very intuitive hunter. I go from my gut. When I decide where I'm going to put up a tree stand, or when I wake up in the morning, I wait for the feeling. And, you can ask me the night before, where are you going to hunt, Sandy? And I'll say something. But really what I do is I get up and I feel for the pull, and then I trust it blindly, and I go to that ridge, or I go to that spot. And tree stands, I usually know where to put those from that gut feeling. And I follow it, and I go with the intent of journeying through the woods, and learning and being taught, and knowing that the hunting experience is accepting whatever happens on my journey through the woods that day. And I always get a gift. Sometimes the gift is coyotes coming by and watching them hunt. Sometimes the gift is the sunrise. Sometimes the gift is watching a huge flock of robins migrate through and getting to study their behavior and being a part of being surrounded by bird calls. Sometimes the gift is a deer, and sometimes I'm not supposed to take the deer. And sometimes I know exactly that's my deer, and I am ready for that moment. And when I do pull the trigger or I do shoot the bow and I do take the deer, I never apologize to the deer because I made up my mind before I started hunting that that was the role I was in. And just like the lion did not apologize to the Cape buffalo, why would I apologize for being a part of life? But I do honor it. And I do place my hands on it. And if I get there before that animal passes, I look that animal in the eye and I thank it with every fiber in my being. And I make promises. And I promise that its children will be taken care of on our land and its grandchildren will be taken care of. And I'll only take what is needed for our freezer or to feed my elders or to feed people in my family. And they will not be wasted. And I will process that animal myself. And when I eat it a year later, when we pull it out of the freezer, like we did last night, Cal, and we look at the food, I'm like, who is this? Not what is this? Who is this? Oh, that's that buck from last year, Sandy. That's your buck. Cal, that was your animal. Remember that? Yeah. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. So when I say hunting is everything, that's what I mean. It's how I want to live. It's how I want to walk my life. And hunters, I've sat next to trophy hunters on airplanes who've told me their stories and shown me their pictures, and I've been polite. That's not my hunter's journey. My hunter's journey, I hope, and with my mentors and my teachers here in this group, because they're my teachers too, I hope it's ethical, I hope it's sustainable, and I hope it's honorable for me so I can sleep well, but for the animals that I am dancing with in that hunt. So, that's my story. It's not so much about a specific hunt that I've done. That would take, more time, but it is about why I hunt and how I got there. And why I think I will always hunt. I cannot eat my food and wear the things that I wear and buy the things that I buy and not take responsibility for it. That's the only way I know to do it. So that's me.
Thanks so much for sharing, Sandy. I really love that the question you posed there, when it comes out of the freezer, to not just be like, what is this? Oh, we're eating deer tonight, to literally be able to say, who is this? Like, I know the story of this deer. There's so much power in that. I see Cal putting your finger up. Please, Cal, jump on.
Yeah, I just want to share what we do. You do what you want to, but every fall when we freeze packages in Ziploc bags with water, is the way I've been doing it. I write on the bag the year and I put the cut from the animal and I put A for the first deer, B for the second deer, C for the third deer, D if we get however many deer, I just go alphabetically. So last night I pulled out some rump steak and it had C on it, and it was the last deer we took last fall, which was the big beautiful 8-point buck that Sandy had harvested. So we know whenever we open a package, I know which animal that is. That's just something I do. It's just part of our honoring. And but definitely the year. I mean, I came across a package the other day. I said, I'm going to go get something out of the bottom of the freezer. It was 2017. And it was some backstrap. And I fried it and it was a little bit off. And I'm like, man, I don't want to waste this backstrap. So I recycled it and I put it in comfy and slow cooked it in oil overnight at like 200 degrees and then had it the next day. It wasn't outstanding, but it was totally edible. And I was like, I didn't want to waste it. It's so precious. So thanks for letting me jump in there, Chris.
Of course. maybe what we'll do here, crew. So we have a couple other folks that are going to speak tonight. I would like to share another story as well. And then we'll probably do a little bit of Q&A at the end. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it on to Jonathan Van Sickle in just a moment here to share. And then we might actually do a little break and then come back on. And Caleb Musgrave is going to be sharing a short story. As some of you know that were here at the beginning, Caleb has COVID. So he may keep his story a little bit short. And man, Caleb, it means so much to us that you showed up here tonight. I also want to just give a quick shout out. Stephanie Stevens, I saw you just joined. If you would like to share tonight, she's another newer member of our team coming on here. Just send me a message. If you'd rather be a fly on the wall tonight, feel free to be that as well. But if you'd like to, just send me a little message and we'll bring you on. And a shout out to Carolyn Knapper. Some of you may have seen her. She's a fisheries biologist from the West Coast. She was supposed to join us tonight and something personal came up. Which is, really unfortunate. We're all kind of holding her in our hearts and our minds tonight as we do this call. So shout out to you, Carolyn, and no worries not being here, and take care of yourself. So I'm going to pass it over to Jonathan right now, but Caleb, just know that you'd be coming on after the break, and Stephanie, fire me a message if you want to chat. Over to you there, Jonathan.
Hello, friends. Thank you, Chris, for offering me this opportunity to share. Before I do, though, I just want to take a quick moment to recognize Sandy. For those of us who have heard Sandy speak before, it's always touching what she shares. But she's so inspiring. When I hear her talk about her journey, it's plain to me that she's done the hard work of facing what most of society considers to be some darker aspects of life, and having to confront where our food and our clothing comes from. She's done that work. She's made that journey. And now when I hear her speak, she just seems so beaming with light about where her journey has brought her. To hear her speak about the gratitude and the reverence and the honor that she has for the animals, how beautiful, and how inspiring that that there are people in our community making these journeys hand in hand with the beings that they share their home with, the plants and the animals and the elements, making these journeys to bring them to a place of beauty. I love it. So I love it, Sandy. Thank you. I had planned on sharing similarly to what Chris and Sandy had shared about my personal hunter's journey, but so much of what I was about to share with you really has been reflected in both what Sandy and what Chris has said. So just last minute here, I've decided to share a hunting story with you. And Chris had said that tonight we're focusing more on like the philosophical or ethical aspects of hunting. And this hunting story that I'm going to share with you, I believe, speaks to that. So as a hunter, so I've been hunting 16 years, and as a hunter, most hunters spend huge amounts of time being still and quiet in the wilderness. And over time, stories accumulate. Things happen out there that you wouldn't even know is an option unless you spent literally thousands of hours sitting still, fitting in with nature. And so the story that I'm about to share with you is a product of that. And the story has a name. It's a true story. It's a true hunting story. And the name of the story is this: the story of 1 million good mornings. Okay. Now, this story happened to me. What I should say is that this story happened. That's more accurate, that this story happened. And I was there. And it happened during a turkey hunt. I was intending on bow hunting a wild turkey. And in order for you to understand the story, first I kind of need to tell you a little bit about bow hunting turkey, just in case you don't know about bow hunting turkey. The way that I bow hunt turkey is that I plan my spot to set up maybe about 50 or 100 yards away from a roost tree. And what a roost tree is where the turkeys will fly up into a tree to sleep overnight. So they fly up in the evening, they sleep overnight, and then they fly down in the morning. And my approach to bow hunting turkeys is to establish what tree they're in the evening, leave, come back while it's still dark in the morning. I sneak in and set myself up about 50 or 100 yards from that roost tree, hoping that when they fly down, they're going to be within bow range of me. So that's what I do. It's in the spring. I walk into the spring forest while it's still pitch black. I find my way to the tree that I've planned to sit at the base of, being as quiet as possible. I get to my tree, I feel the trunk in the pitch black, and I know it's the tree that I've chosen. So I slouch down and I'm sitting with my butt on the ground, with my back up against the tree, and my bow in my lap, and there's an arrow on my bow, and it's pitch black in the bush. And I wait, and I listen. What I'm listening for is the sound of, well, there's a few different sounds, but mostly I'm listening for turkey sounds. This is a turkey hunt after all. And so I'm listening for little chirps or clucks. But what I'm really listening for is like a flapping of their wings as they fly down. Because that tells me that they were in fact still in the roost tree and that they have in fact flew down. So I'm sitting there in the dark, listening intensely. And finally, I hear something. Just the gentle rustling of leaves, just a few, fairly far off. And I think, oh, okay, maybe there's a turkey. I didn't hear anyone fly down, but maybe it's a turkey. So I prepare myself by being even extra still. And I take a few breaths. But then I hear more rustling, and it's getting closer, and it kind of sounds like footsteps. And so I think, hey, okay. And it's just starting to get just a little bit of light. I can see just a few feet out in front of me. It's really still pretty dark, but there's just a little bit of light coming in through the bush. And what happened next, I'll never forget. The rustling became constant. It was this low, gentle rustling of leaves. And at this moment, I realized that this is not a turkey. And at this moment, I realized I have no idea what this is. I've never heard this sound before. What could be making this constant, low rustling of leaves? And whatever it is, it's getting closer. And inside myself, I start freaking out. I have no idea what this is. I've spent thousands of hours in the bush. I've never heard this before. There's barely any light, and whatever it is getting closer to me. So within myself, I am freaking out. My heart is pounding. I don't know if I should get up and run because it's coming to get me and potentially harm me, or maybe I should just sit still and it will pass me by. But instantly I flip into this life and death mode because I don't know what it is, but it's getting closer. And then it starts happening all around me, and it's getting louder, this slow, gentle rustling of leaves. It's getting louder, and now it's just a few feet from me, and it just stops. And it's silent. And my eyes are closed because I can't stand to even look. And I take a breath and I do open my eyes. And when I open my eyes, I see that the forest floor is covered in wildflowers. These tiny little wildflowers, purple little wildflowers. And there was just enough light coming into the bush that I could see them. And as the light grew stronger and stronger, I could see that they were throughout the bush. This soft purple carpet of these tiny, precious wildflowers. And so I caught my breath. Because I realized what was coming to get me was these tiny purple wildflowers. They were coming to get me. And for the longest time, for literally for years, I thought about that story because I thought something was coming to kill me. So I thought about that story and I thought, wow, you know, I thought what I heard was the rustling of the leaves as the light dried them, they curled back. I thought that was the rustling that I heard, and that's what exposed the flowers. I thought that that's what I heard for years, but I kept thinking about this story and what happened. And then I thought that, well, what really happened is that those purple flowers, they begin to turn to face the morning sun. And they were moving the leaves and they were rustling the leaves. So perhaps what I heard was the flowers. And that's what I thought for years, but I kept on thinking about that story, you know? What did I hear that morning? What did I hear? What is going on? I'm really interested in the truth. And for me, part of the truth has to do with what's going on, what's really going on. And I think what was really going on, I think that morning, I heard the light. I think I heard the light. Because without the light, there would have been no sound. So did I hear the light that morning? That's the story of 1 million good mornings. Thank you so much for listening, because I carry these stories, and the longer I go without telling them, the more prone I am to forgetting them. So being able to tell them helps them stay alive within me. And when I go into the bush itself is medicine for me. And I do my best to internalize that. And when I come back into not the bush, I try and carry that medicine with me so I can share it with people who perhaps don't have an opportunity to experience that medicine directly for themselves. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Wow. I feel like we should just have a moment of silence there to take that one in. That was potent, Jonathan. What a beautiful storyteller you are too. Yeah, when, you know, I referenced earlier this evening about how hunting has literally changed who I am as a human being. You know, those are the types of experiences that are hard to pass on to other folks that haven't been out there, you know? You know, if you have a partner that doesn't hunt, I think you can spend a lot of time in the woods, and, you know, every time you come in and it's like, oh, did he get something tonight? Did he get something tonight? And, you know, you'll often hit this part in your journey where, you know, it's very much about food for me. You know, hunting is about bringing home meat to put in the freezer that we're going to feed, but it's just as much about all those other things. And I definitely have days where it's like, and long stretches of days where it's not at all about what I'm about to harvest. You know, it's about that crazy experience that Jonathan just had, where you get to witness something because you sat so still for so long, or because you asked such deep questions while you were out there as you're trying to figure out, you know, the miracles of life while you're out there. It's such a profound way to relate to the landscape. And And I feel like it's so helpful in the context of this modern world where we're becoming, as you know, a species, so disconnected from the ecology of our planet that keeps us alive. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for sharing that tonight. I feel that was just a beautiful, beautiful story there. Yeah, and you know, completely relays what this is all about. You know, again, it's why we call it the hunter's journey, not hunting 101. So we're going to take a break in a moment and then come back. We have two more presenters that are going to come on tonight and share. Caleb Musgrave is going to come, and Stephanie messaged me in the break there. Stephanie's going to come on. Stephanie's coming in from Wisconsin tonight. So I'm really excited to hear from her. Before we take the break though, folks, I just wanted to let folks know. So the crew of us have been putting together this collective we're calling the Hunter's Journey. And it's both a course and a community. And it's, you know, really for the folks that don't have a hunt camp, or maybe you were brought up in a hunt camp, but you don't connect with the values of your hunt camp. So we have a group of people with shared values, you know, a shared value that hunting is about more than just going and harvesting food. It's not about sport for us. It is about harvesting food, but it's about this journey. It's also a group that has shared values that, you know, reverence for the species we hunt is important, that stewardship of the land is a foundation. You know, we don't hunt if we think that we're going to negatively impact the long-term health of the forest. We are a community that very much believes in the movement towards reconciliation with First Nations people, you know, and that, you know, me as a non-Indigenous person here on Turtle Island, I didn't think I even mentioned, but I'm from Ontario as well. I recognize that the Indigenous people here have different rights to be out on the land than I do, you know, and have different practices and different seasons. So those are some of the values of our community. And if you connect with those values, and if you're looking for mentors to help you, then I just wanted to let you know we have registration open right now for our Hunter's Journey, our fall 2022 cohort. And we have an early bird special on right now that actually ends tomorrow. So what's involved with this is basically you have lifetime access to this community, because hunting is a lifelong journey. So you, by signing up, you get access long-term to the community. And we run bi-weekly. Every other week, we have this thing we call the virtual hunt camp. It's a much smaller group than we often have on these bigger free calls. You're able to turn on your mic and turn on your camera, and we get together and we're sharing stories, but we're also sharing about, hey, you know, Sandy, you were out in the woods today chasing deer. Like, what happened today? What did you see? What did you learn? Or yourself, you know, if you join the community, you're able to come on here and be like, hey, Chris, I went out on my first turkey hunt today, and this is what happened. And I don't know, did this make sense? And what do you think I should do tomorrow? And then we have this whole team of mentors that are able to kind of weigh in and help you troubleshoot. So much of hunting is being able to read the story of the landscape and adapt to the information that's coming on and adjust your strategy as you go. So that's one component of it, these virtual hunt camp calls. The next component, we have this series that's new this year, and it's called the Base Camp Calls. And they're going to be happening every Wednesday starting October 12th. And for the Base Camp Calls, if you show up, basically this is for the brand new hunters that are like, I'm totally new to this. You know, maybe you have your license, maybe you don't. Maybe you've shot a gun before, maybe you've never shot a gun or never shot a bow. It doesn't really matter, but it's for the total beginner. So over that 4-week call series, our team's going to be basically working with you to lay the foundations, to make sure you understand what are the steps that you need to take and how do you go and apply them in your unique scenario. You know, whether you need to find land to hunt on, whether you need to choose your first weapons or your first bow or your first firearm, whether you're thinking about what species to start with, we'll actually help you figure out all of those pieces and get going. And we'll do our best to connect you with other members of the course in your region, assuming they are, so you folks can potentially get together and go out on the land. So that's the Base Camp Calls. Beyond that, we have a whole library of videos on the actual specifics of tacting. You know, one of the biggest questions that people often ask is like, if I was to harvest something, I don't even know what to do with it. So we have videos on how to butcher a deer in there. We have videos on how to clean a rabbit, videos on how to clean a duck. We have videos on how to sight in your shotgun, videos on how to set up a tree stand. So we have like kind of the tactical videos in the library for folks to watch on your own time. And then we have a community where you can come in and share your stories. And like Jonathan said, you know, he ended his story with how meaningful it is for him to be able to actually come here tonight and share that story. And I'm a big believer that, you know, part of the medicine in the stories and the teachings comes through and we're able to share with others. So the other thing you get through this community is, you know, if you go out and you're having these profound experiences in nature, or maybe these incredibly frustrating stories in nature, because I can say as a hunter, like I have some, you know, we're telling all these like zenned out stories where you come in like really like just, oh my goodness, that was magical. You know, I listened to the sun wake up the world this morning. And maybe I don't want to speak in front of other people, but I have other days where I come in and I'm like frustrated as heck, and maybe even borderline like angry, because stuff's just not working for me, you know. So you can share those stories too, and then we can laugh about it together and help you troubleshoot it. So all of that's to say is that the fall cohort registration is open right now. Registration is going to close October 12th, and then we're not taking anyone else in, so we can fully focus on the team that joins us for the next little bit. So if you'd like to join us, the early bird special ends tomorrow. Though that was where I wanted to go with this right now. So the price is going to be going up tomorrow. I'm going to share the link here. huntersjourney.com is the link. And on top of the early bird special, if you enter Hunt 75, you'll get an additional $75 even off of the early bird special. So if you're looking for a mentor, if you're feeling the call deep inside, if you're looking for community and support to help you make this a reality for you, this team here would love to support you in that. And if you're not ready to go there yet, hopefully we will still be here when you are, or you'll find whatever you're looking for your next step. So let's take a 5-minute break. I have 9:05 by my time right now. So let's come back at 9:10, and we're going to bring Caleb and Stephanie Stevens on to close us down the night. In the meantime, if you got any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat there. And yeah, we'll reconvene in 5 minutes with a couple more stories. Thanks, everybody. So nice to have you here tonight. We really appreciate it. Well, sorry, yeah, I'll just welcome folks back. So thanks everybody from coming back from the break there. And yeah, we're going to bring Stephanie on right now. Stephanie's kind of new to our team here. So we've been in conversations over the last kind of 8 months. And she's got a fascinating story. So we're really excited to have her on here tonight. So I won't even say anything else. I'll just pass it over to you to introduce yourself, Stephanie. But thanks so much for joining us. I know you have a lot on the go, so we appreciate you taking some time.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed listening tonight too. It kind of fed my spirit. I have been hunting. I'm hunting with a recurve, and it does get really frustrating at times. So it's really nice to be here as a participant too, because it kind of breathes that new life back into everything. And I wasn't really sure on what story to tell tonight, but I'm actually going to tell the story like when I very first started hunting. It was just my sister and I. My dad always wanted to have a boy. He always wanted a son. So what happened was I was the one that ended up getting all the guns and hunting stuff for Christmas, and my sister would get like the Barbies and the girly stuff, you know. So I just remember like I was a teenager and, you know, pretty young, and, you know, going up to hunt for the first time by myself and going up in the stand all by myself. And it was like pitch dark, and I didn't really know what to expect or, you know, anything like that. Honestly, I was a little bit scared of the dark at the time. But I do remember one of my friends had given me some sage, and I had it in a container, like a glass container, and I had glitter for some reason in the container too. And I just remember taking that with me. And in the morning, I had been sitting up there, and I just remember putting it down. And, you know, I was scared, and I just kind of put it down, and I said a little prayer, like for protection, and, you know, just being thankful that I was out there and hoping that maybe I would see something when I was out there. And the sun just started like kind of peeking over the horizon, like it just started to come up. And I just remember like putting that out and just kind of praying, and I watched it drop down because I was up in a stand, and I just remember kind of watching that glitter. And a little bit later, it was almost like you know, the sun started rising a little bit more, and there was a frost that had come over the entire landscape. It was a cool November morning, and I just remember watching the sunrise, and the landscape glittered like back. So it was almost like creation had received that gift that I had given. And, you know, with the sage being white, and then the glitter, you know, with the sparkly, you know, kind of shining in the sun, it was almost like it had received that gift and given it back to me tenfold. You know, the whole entire landscape was just glistening in the morning sunlight. And to me, it was a really spiritual experience. I was able to harvest my first deer ever too. And I gave that deer, after I had harvested it, I went down and I gave it its last meal and then its last little bit of water. And I just said a prayer for it. And I was just extremely thankful for it and the experience. It is definitely spiritual to be able to go out into creation by yourself, a lot of times, and just kind of blend in and have the most amazing things happen, kind of like Sandy was talking about. Every time you go out there, there's a gift and something really amazing that will happen, whether it be an animal that come to you, or you just notice something or see something about nature. And so that was my story that I would like to share for tonight. There's Lucia.
Hey, Stephanie, if I can hold you on for just another moment and maybe put you on the spot. It'd be kind of neat if you wanted to share, folks. So I know Stephanie's actually really involved in Wisconsin, I believe, in actually introducing both youth and women into the world of hunting.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you wanted to just share a couple of thoughts, for the new hunters here tonight, if you had any kind of tips or what you're thinking about when you're kind of introducing new people, that when it feels kind of overwhelming and there's a lot to get, to kind of get over. Do you have anything that would?
Just do it. Just go out and do it. There's no better time to start than right now. A lot of times we just, I'll borrow equipment. We just kind of do the best that we can. Actually, Lucia here, I was talking to her earlier. When the pandemic first started, she actually came on a turkey hunt. We took her brother, who was, I think, you want to go ahead and tell him the story.
So, wait, I just
we went on a turkey hunt, and we had actually borrowed decoys from one of our friends and a slate call from one of our friends, and we set up a blind to where we've been seeing turkey. We knew they were kind of in the area by scouting, basically just driving past and seeing them in the area. So
we started waiting and whispering, and then I tried some of the
slate call,
slate call, and I started rubbing the stick against it to make that turkey noise, and then we heard turkey sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And they heard us, and they're kind of talking to us, so I kept doing it. And then that's when we saw the turkey come in. And then Daniel, my brother Daniel, was in Christmas?
No, he had a gun.
Oh.
He had a shotgun. Then what did Daniel do?
He shot it.
Yup.
And I saw it just collapse to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we slowly got out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Daniel picked it up. Then we found where it was shot, and then we took a couple pictures with it.
Mm-hmm. So basically, I had her and her brother in the blind. The pandemic just started, and we were all about food sovereignty and stuff like that. But it was just kind of an eye opener, because that's when, meat was getting scarce in the grocery stores, and, we were just looking for something to do outside and away from people. So I actually brought her and my son on the hunt, and they were actually kind of starting to bicker a little bit. We're sitting in this tiny space, and we're, sharing space. And she had never called a turkey before. She's never even used a slate call. And I felt almost like, she was over calling, but as a mom, I let her go for it. I was keeping her quiet. They weren't fighting, it was just like she was doing it. So I guess my advice is just to try it, just use trial and error. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't work. Luckily she was able to call in a turkey for her brother. I do always bring kids with, or as much as I can anyways. I was hunting when I was pregnant with her. She used to come on, we'd bring her on backpacks and take her hunting on a lot of different hunting trips. She's helped me track so many of my deer. but it's harder, to bring youth, but I think it's important for them to be raised in that lifestyle, especially now more than ever. Kids are on their screens a lot more than ever, and just to be able to reconnect and bring them back out there. I'm a mentor for a Learn to Hunt turkey program through Pulaski. It's a local high school. They do hunter safety right at the school. And then I help mentor youth. I've taken youth out on successful turkey hunts. And then this past year, I did mentor a blind lady on a turkey hunt. I learned so much. Like, she was just the most amazing human. And I just give her so much credit for going out there with me. And I mean, she can't see. We had like a holographic sight on her gun, but she was not able to shoot it. We didn't have a turkey come into range, but just for her to be able to trust me to walk into the woods and trust me to lead her, and then like almost like just this vastness, like to trust me to tell her it was okay to shoot into a vastness, that to me was just such an honor that she held that much trust into me, and it taught me so much as a mentor. But I guess just my best advice is just to go for it. Even if you don't have your supplies, you can always borrow them from people. I don't always have like the fanciest clothes myself. My dad gave me one of his hunting suits when I very first started hunting. It's gotta be like 25, 30 years old, and I still wear that. It's too big for me, but I feel like it's my lucky suit. You can get a lot of things secondhand, like Facebook Marketplace and different things like that. But I would, if you're starting out, just ask somebody to borrow. A lot of times people have extra stuff, extra decoys. They'll actually probably give them to you if they don't use them. A lot of times hunters have them just sitting in their garage. So just go for it. That's my best advice. And you make so many mistakes out there. You make more mistakes than you're successful. And that's the best way to learn, is just by making all of those mistakes.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Wise words coming in there tonight.
Thank you.
And thank you to your daughter. I didn't catch her name, but for sharing.
Yeah.
Go for it, Cal.
Hey, Stephanie.
Hello.
Listen, when I run classes, I
Yes.
tell the students that they're not allowed to make mistakes. They are welcome to have educational experiences.
Yes,
saying.
that's a wonderful. Yes, that's a
Yeah.
wonderful thing that you can tell them.
It really helps pull the negativity out of the experience.
Yes, and that fear, I think a lot of them get so nervous, and you just got to try to make it as fun, and the least amount of intimidation possible. There's so many factors, especially like shooting a gun. I know a lot of kids are afraid, to shoot a gun for the first time, and they're afraid of the kick and things like that, and their heart's just racing, and you just got to go for it.
Awesome. We're getting close to wrapping this evening, but we still have Caleb. Caleb Musgrave, come on, man. Caleb, what a trooper and a warrior here, showing up with COVID tonight. I messaged him multiple times today and said, Caleb, you don't have to come tonight. And he said, man, yeah, you'd have to kill me to not come tonight. So love you, brother. Thanks for being here with us, man. And the floor is yours, my friend.
Appreciate that. I just want to acknowledge that that's my sister that was just talking with my niece. So I'm very, very proud of that young girl, and very, very proud of that young lady that I refer to as sister. Always makes me, I'm not sure if it's the phlegm or the emotions, but my heart's tight and my chest is tightening up right now. So
I love you, Caleb. Love you, brother.
So my background is a little different than everybody else's when it comes down to my journey. It started very similar to Stephanie's kids, in the womb. My first 2-3 years of life was up in Saskatchewan, James Bay. And so, moose, snow geese, Canada goose, duck, that was the food that we had. My mother was eating that, nourishing my body and growing my body on that kind of food. And then when we came back down south, my father, my grandfather, my uncles, they all hunt or hunted. And so the first memories I have are of hunting. My first memories of food is wild game. I was like 4 years old. I can remember this. Like the first meal I remember as a 4-year-old. The very first meal I remember was a cheeseburger at McDonald's that a seagull stole, so I never got to actually eat it. But the first memory I remember eating a meal was duck. It was a big plate of teal. And I know it was teal because they were tiny little birds. I thought they were like quail or something. Even at that age, I knew they were tiny birds. And that was just how we were raised. We ate wild game and we ate normal domestic food, beef, chicken, all that kind of stuff. But majority of the time we were eating wild game. And every time my sister would gripe about it, because she didn't like the taste of venison. She can handle duck, she could handle goose, but she couldn't stand venison. My dad would remind her, like, this is what we lived off of growing up. This is what his family lived off of. Our family had always been on his side very, very poor, because it was very rare for First Nations people to get hired for work in this region. And on my mother's side, they were United Empire loyalists. There were Scottish and English settlers who settled in New England, New Hampshire area, and then moved north into Gaspé and into this Acadian region. And they lived off the land. They lobster trapped, they fished, but they also hunted moose. There was quite a lot of moose in that area. And they had like the legit surf and turf. You'd go out and catch a moose in the morning, get it home, drag it out of the bush, get it home, get it hung up, and then go and check your lobster traps and have lobster tail with moose meat for dinner. And that was just their way of life. And so it was very normalized for me. And growing up, I grew up in a rural area. I grew up in Bruce County, Ontario, which is this really weird amalgamation of like urban kids whose parents work at the power plant, redneck kids who grew up in the sticks, and then Indigenous kids who grew up on the res, all going to the same school. And so you would hear all these different kinds of hunting stories. And then the one or two kids being like, Loblaws hunts from my house. For those in America, Loblaw is a grocery store. And so it was always normalized for me. I never, ever, ever questioned hunting. I never even questioned the idea of getting into hunting. I just knew that when I turned a certain age, which was 12, I would go and get my gun license. I would go get my hunting cert. And then I would go and hunt with my dad. And that's just how it was. It wasn't until I was 17, 18 years old. Geez, just like every other extreme decision made by youth, it was over someone I had a crush on. She hated hunting. She was very anti-hunting, and convinced me that I should become vegan. And I lasted 2 months. And I felt great. I felt like I was very ethical. I could understand it. I understood her points on it. And there's no, in any way, shape, or form, animosity towards veganism in my heart. Veganism and vegetarianism, they understand that they cannot take a life, and therefore they don't want to be participating in that taking of life. I can understand that, and I can respect that, even to this day. What happened was, at the 2-month point, I was jaundiced. I was dealing with scurvy symptoms, even though I was taking in fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, nuts, and everything else, lots of soy as well. And of course, being in a rural area, there wasn't a lot of great options. But when I finally went to a doctor about it, it turns out when they did blood tests that I genetically require meat. I have no option to be a vegan. And so that experiment lasted 2 months. And I decided I would just hunt. But now I had all these thoughts in my head of, well, taking a life is bad. I shouldn't do this. I should be very much against this. And as I started going out hunting more, I started seeing how my father interacted with hunting. And I saw how my uncles interacted with hunting. And I saw how my cousins interacted with hunting. And it helped me understand what Chris got to in his journey. And that was that hunting is not bad. People can be bad. People can do very bad things. And we can be very unsustainable. We can be very unethical. But if you carry the right morality and you carry the right ethics, hunting is sustainable, it is beautiful, and it is healing. In my 20s, I began taking friends out because I wanted to hunt with everybody else. I wanted to hunt with friends. Like, my cousins were busy, or my dad would be too busy, and I wanted to go out hunting, and I couldn't just go hunting alone. You got to hunt with other people. And at least that's how my brain was nowadays. I hunt quite frequently alone. But in my early 20s, I just started inviting friends out. Of course, while I was teaching survival skills and bushcraft, I started my company when I was 20 years old. Teaching since then, I'm 14 years this fall will be the 14th anniversary of Canadian bushcraft, which is kind of cool. But I would have students that would see me bring in like a moose roast or bring in a bunch of ducks or bring in a squirrel or two and cook it for my meal. And they'd be like, hey, do you mind if I try that? Yeah, there's plenty. Have some. I would have like a moose stew or moose chili or something. So everybody gets a bowl. Anybody that wanted to, at least. And this became this kind of journey of people saying, hey, can I come out hunting with you? I just got my hunting license. I've been thinking about it ever since you let me try that stew or that moose roast or that squirrel. Yeah, come on out. And I'd take them hunting with me. And then they would start to ask questions of these ethics and morality. And it would come up again and again. Why do we hunt? Why do we do this stuff? And for me, it's simple. I have to eat meat. Therefore, I want to be involved in eating meat and how that meat gets to my table. It's the same experience Sandy went through. It's the same experience that Jonathan and Chris and everybody that's talked about tonight has gone through, is that I've openly and consciously decided that I will be the one that takes the life to feed me. And that is good. That's a simple answer. That's a great answer. There doesn't need to be any more. But they kept asking questions. Why do we keep hunting? Why do we do this? Why do we, and it could be everywhere from the ethical quandary of like, why are we allowed to take a life? What gives us this anthrocentric right to take a life? But it could also be, we've been sitting out here for 6 weeks straight and it's freaking cold. There's mud up my pants. There's balsam fir needles stuck down my neck. We haven't seen a duck in months and months and months. Why are we out here? So why are we doing this? Why do we suffer just to get a few birds or one deer that's going to feed X amount of people for X amount of weeks, if that? We hunt in a large group. We have sometimes a dozen people hunting with us in my hunting party. And because of that, one deer doesn't go very far. You got a dozen people taking an equal share out of that deer. It doesn't go very far. So why do we do this? And this can go back to that stewardship talk that I had last week during the previous Hunting with Heart session, where I actively want to participate in the environment. But there's also these moments that make it all worth it. He's not here tonight to defend himself, but one of my first serious dives into teaching people how to hunt was my friend Adam. I met Adam when I was at university. He was actually, for a short while, my recruiter to get me into university, and then my mentor while I was at university, and then became my boss while I was going to university and working there. And near the end of that, when I was getting ready to step away from university, he ushered me into his office and he sat me down and he said, listen, and he's like this urban dude. He grew up partially on the res, mostly in the city. And he was like, he dressed, you know, the classic urbanite lifestyle, even wore cardigans, still does once in a while. I pick on him for that. But anyways, he sat me down and he said, I got my gun license and my hunting license and I don't know what I'm doing. And I went, okay, pass me some tobacco and I'll teach you. And so we went out, he bought the ammo. We went out and we did a goose hunt and we failed. We couldn't even get a goose to even look our way, which was really weird for me because I've been an avid waterfowler for my entire adult life and all my teens. Waterfowl hunting is my favorite thing to hunt. Whether it's a goose or a mallard or a wood duck, whatever it may be, I love hunting them, all waterfowl. So that was really weird that we went a whole day and I couldn't even get a goose to look my way. Had the decoys, had the calls, didn't work. Went out the next day. We got them to come near, but then they got spooked and they flagged us and they took off. Flagging is when they literally show their wings to you as they fly away. So they're telling you that they saw you. It's like them waving goodbye while they're also flipping you off. And this went on for a week, and then a month, and then 2 months, then the entire hunting season. And then I went out again within the next hunting season and we failed again for an entire season. So a full year of waterfowl hunting with this guy. And every chance we got, we'd go out and try. And we were getting more and more frustrated, more and more agitated, more and more annoyed. This was like 2015 into 2016. Not a single bird flying in for us. Not a single bird flying in. We would see them always over there somewhere. but we could never get close to them. One thing I didn't have at the time was a boat. So if we saw them way over there, well, they had to stay over there. And this one morning, the night before I went out, I was like, you know what, I'm going to buy a new call. I'm going to buy some new decoys. I'm going to paint my old decoys. Let's try it again. And I said to him, this is our last chance. If we don't get it this time, we're done waterfowling. I'll take you deer hunting. I'll take you moose hunting, but I'm not taking waterfowl hunting anymore. And the next morning, it's really foggy and it's still air. And it's kind of cold, but not freezing. And this is like the worst weather to hunt waterfowl in. You want it to be either raining with a little bit of wind, or you want it to be sunny with a lot of wind. You don't want anything in between. You need to have that wind, and you need to have that kind of cruddy weather or overly warm weather to get them to come in, because they have to move to see you. You can call as much as you want, but if they're 10, 15 kilometers on the other side of the lake, they're not coming to just a couple of calls. So we got up and saw the fog and how thick it was in my front yard. And we went, oh man, this might be the last time we ever waterfowl hunt together. And we went out and we were so stressed that we forgot 2/3 of my decoys. We had a dozen goose decoys and that's it. Most of them are floaters, a couple of them were shells, which can't float, so you'd have to put them up on shore. And we found this one little place that faces a big island here on Rice Lake. And as we sat down, we heard clucks off in the distance. And through the fog, we could hear more and more of these clucks. And we realized there was a massive raft of Canada geese, maybe 300 meters, approximately 300 yards away. And all we have is 2 goose calls and a dozen decoys, and only some of them are floating. And we look at each other and say, this is going to be the most frustrating, humiliating end to our hunting career together. Okay, let's try it. And we sat there and I called and he would call and I would call, and you could hear them all clucking in response and doing their little moans off in the distance. And after about an hour and a half of this frustrating back and forth, very emotionally taxing back and forth, we hear a call that's closer. And so I respond. Right away, it responds. So I respond. Right away, that call responds again. And it's getting closer. And out of the fog, from 300 yards away, this one lone goose swam across an entire strait all the way to our decoys. From just my lone goose call, we broke one goose out of a flock of 300 over to us. Now, you could say a lot of things there. You could say that that was a spiritual awakening. You could say that that was, Creator or the Goose Nation or whatever you want to describe it as, saying, no, keep trying. We'll provide for you. You got to keep trying. You could also say that we found the one bird that needed Darwin to be involved with, because that bird, Lord help them, they went right into those decoys and tried to make friends with all the decoys. These plastic shell birds that are just solid, not even solid, hollow plastic that's just bobbing in the water. And the call is happening 15 yards up on the shore. And he's still calling at them, honking at them and moving his head around, trying to figure out why aren't they moving around? Why aren't they talking? And we kind of just left him in there for a few minutes as me and Adam composed ourselves like, this goose is here. We brought a goose over. And then became the challenge of, if we want to shoot this goose, we can't shoot it right now because it's in our decoys, and these are the brand new decoys. And the last thing you want to do is shoot brand new decoys, especially in like neck deep water out where they were. And well, you ever heard you'll hear about the duck hunters clap, where they try to jump birds out of their decoys. Hey bird. And you just do that. You jump up and you clap at them, and that surprises them enough that they get off the water. And instead, he turned his head and faced us and honked again. And honked as if he was like challenging us. Like, come on then. Come on, Skoden. Let's go. And so I raised my gun and I yelled at him, "Get up off the water if you want to die." And he jumped up, got about 6 inches above the heads of my decoys, and I took the shot. And then I had to swim after him because the waves suddenly showed up, because the wind suddenly showed up. As this goose died, the wind picked up and pushed all the fog away. And we had scared the geese with that gunshot, but because of how the lake is, that gunshot echoes off all the shoreline. So they don't know where that gunshot came from. And as I swam out, like this really ridiculous looking retriever dog, we had a flock of about 50 starts flying our way because they got startled by the gunshot. And so I'm having to swim back. Got a mosquito buzzing around my ear. I had to swim back with this. The water was so deep and I was wearing waders, so they're flooding. So I'm having to swim with both hands, but hold on to the bird in my teeth. That Adam was laughing so hard that he couldn't take the shot. And as I swam to shore, I looked like a retriever dog, doggy paddling with this goose hanging out of my teeth. Get to shore, run for my gun, and he realizes, oh crap, they're here. And we fired a big volley. Both of us emptied our magazines on those geese and completely missed all of them. We missed every single one of them with all of the shots. We had a flock of 50 birds, 20 yards over our heads. Couldn't drop a single one of them. And so we put tobacco down for that goose and we divided the goose up. Well, we planned on dividing the goose up. We started plucking the bird. And then we got a call from a woman that worked at Trent with Adam, not Chris, with Adam. And her grandchild was going to be doing their walking out ceremony, which is a very important Mushkegowuk and Ewe Cree ceremony where the kids step on the ground for the first time and they're given a ceremonial weapon to kill a bird ritually or kill a deer ritually. She was in need of a bird and she had heard that we were trying goose hunting again. And so that goose that sacrificed itself for us went to a Cree child up north in Chisasibi. And that child was able to continue that ceremony of walking out ceremony and ritually kill that bird. And that wouldn't have happened if we had given up. That would have never have happened if we gave up. And so Adam and I still hunt waterfowl and we still sometimes stink at it. But it's not about the kill. It's about the hunt. It's about the challenge. It's about the camaraderie. One of the reasons I love waterfowl hunting is you can sit together and chat. Sometimes you'll have somebody smoking a stogie while they're there. It's very different from deer hunting and very different from moose hunting and elk hunting. Waterfowl is very much more a community experience. And so we participate in it to this day. And him and I have both accepted that, yeah, we'll hunt deer. Yeah, we'll hunt moose. Yeah, we'll hunt turkey and all that. But this is our favorite hunt now. As much as we suffered for a whole year to get that bird, we got that bird. So that's my rant for the night. My lungs are telling me to stop while I'm ahead. So miigwech for listening to me, and I'll pass it back to Chris.
Yeah, Caleb, thanks so much, brother. Wow, and thanks so much for coming on, even when you're having a rough night there, man. Oh man, it's so funny. You know, I had a really hectic day today. I'm actually heading out into the backcountry for 8 days, leaving tomorrow morning. I got to get up, you know, before the sun rises, or not at sunrise tomorrow. I still got a bunch of packing to do. Had a very rushed around, hectic day, and you know, showed up for this call like 10 minutes before we were live. I'm looking over my notes, you know, and coming on a little bit frantic and tired. Every single time we get together as a group for these calls, I feel so recharged and inspired afterwards. So I'm so honored to sit with the people that are in the circle tonight. Thank you to the people that showed up to listen tonight. You know, it means a lot to us to be able to share these stories. You know, they're so impactful for us. And, you know, as much as, you know, we have this program that we're promoting and, you know, part of this webinar is to sell the course. You know, this journey is about so much more than a program for us. And having you here is actually meaningful to all of us. So I sincerely mean that. And I want to share that. And I wish you all the best in your journeys, wherever you go. Of course, if you were interested in being part of our crew for the next little bit, we do this, you know, every other week. We get together, and the difference is that you get to turn your screen on and you get to chat and share your stories and ask your questions, and we'll help you troubleshoot whatever scenarios you're working on right now and help you make hunting part of your life. Or if you already hunt, we have a team that's a wealth of knowledge, and we can help you kind of take things to the next level and connect with the community. So I'm going to leave it there. We were supposed to have a Q&A tonight, but we're already 15 minutes kind of over our plan tonight. So I think we're just going to leave it tonight. Stay tuned. I'm going to be, even if you don't join the community, we will be sending out some occasional newsletters and throwing out some events and stuff for our Hunter's Journey crew. If you'd like to join us in the 2022 cohort, though, we're starting up basically now. So we've got all of the things that I mentioned earlier today. We've got the bi-weekly meetings. We've got the base camp for the new hunters. We've got all the pre-recorded material. We are working on some in-person gatherings in 2023 as well. So that's super exciting. I don't have specific details yet, but that'll be available to people that join this cohort in this community. So the early bird special ends tomorrow at midnight. So if you want to get in on it, go to thehuntersjourney.com. Remember, if you enter Hunt 75, you get an additional $75 off of that early bird price. So I hope some of you will consider going on this journey with us and are feeling supported. And if it's not your time right now, then we wish you well, and hopefully our paths will cross again in the future. Thank you to the team, Caleb, Stephanie, Sandy, Jonathan, Cal. Shout out to Carolyn tonight, who's not with us. And have a great night, everybody. Thank you for joining us again.